Hey guys, welcome back to session 6 of Abiding at the Feet of Jesus. At this point, we are in the middle of Christ's teachings about the core values of his kingdom. We've discovered that people in his kingdom are not necessarily the religious, self-sufficient, or performers who look good outwardly. Rather, his kingdom is offered to the broken, who for different reasons have come to the end of themselves, the ones who understand their need of healing and know that they need a king. Also the ones who, because of brokenness, begin to mourn and have quit pretending that everything is great. They are also meek and teachable. Now they are hungry for his righteousness, not their own. So I hope now halfway through you can look back and you can see how each one of these Beatitudes progresses through, based on where you are in the conversation. And so moving on to the next one from the previous one. And I think that's why Christ did them in the order that he did. And so as we look at this next one, it's built on the foundation of all the other ones. So take a moment to look at this group that we have just described. They're broken, they're mourning, they're meek, and they're hungry. It's a rough-looking bunch of people, isn't it? In Paul's words, think of what he said about in 1 Corinthians 1:26. He said that not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were influential. Many were not of noble birth. And in the whole context there, he was saying that God doesn't call the elite and the ones who have it all together. He calls the broken. He calls the lost. He calls those who understand their need for a Savior. So let's move into mercy. Matthew chapter 5:7. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. The virtue of being merciful. Do you like it? How do you feel about it? Do you like merciful people? Are you yourself merciful? Do you have the need for mercy? Well, I think the only way to know the answer to many of these questions is to get down into the sticks and define it. So the word mercy itself means to aid the afflicted, to help the wretched, to rescue the miserable. So in the Bible, the word goes in two directions. First, a kindness shown to someone in need. Second, a punishment withheld from a guilty person. So I'm going to read those again because I know for me over the years, it's taken me a while to kind of comprehend. So the first statement, a kindness showed to someone in need. Secondly, a punishment withheld from a guilty person. So let's break this down. There's a common expression that many like to say. It says that grace is when you get what you don't deserve. Mercy is when you don't get what you do deserve. So let's dive into this a little bit deeper. I'm loving this conversation. I would love to be known as a person who rescues the miserable and aids the afflicted. But I do have a little problem with being in the other position, the one who needs mercy. I'd rather be the helper. I don't know if you guys relate to that, but it's humbling to be the one who needs mercy. And sometimes it feels good and can serve our self-righteousness to be the one extending mercy. I think we all agree that mercy in and of itself is a good thing. Even people outside of the church would agree with that. So the question is, why is it not happening? What is the problem? Some people even go as far as to see mercy as a weakness. For example, the Romans, they were merciless in their time, and it was a valued virtue. They actually valued the lack of mercy. They thought that mercy weakened people. Others are just unable to show mercy. The Pharisees fit into this category. The law they studied was clear on the importance of showing mercy. They knew what God commanded along these lines, but they were many times unable to fulfill it. So the essence of mercy expresses the fact that when we receive the mercy of God, our natural response should be to extend mercy to others. So let's look at merciful acts versus merciful people. So anyone is definitely capable of merciful acts, but we must make a distinction. Just because you're capable of doing something merciful, that doesn't mean that you're a merciful person. So do you see the difference there? So the Pharisees, they could prepare themselves ahead of time to do a merciful act, but their merciful act didn't make them merciful people. It was a religious duty. It was fulfilling an obligation, and many times it was an outward expression to the people around them to show their self-righteousness. So going back to the Romans during the gladiator days, many times the emperor at the end of the fight, he was able to do a merciful act. We already know that the Romans understood that mercy was a weakness, but sometimes the emperor would decide to show mercy, and the crowd probably thought to themselves, what a merciful emperor. That is far from the truth. It was one isolated act of mercy, and we can only assume it was for his own, self-promotion. It was for his own way of playing to the crowd. Here's the reason why people like the Pharisees or the Roman emperor are incapable of being merciful. Mercy and grace doesn't come out of proud, self-righteous people. Generally speaking, rigidity, intolerance, judgmental attitudes, and condemnation flow out of them, but very little mercy. So the order of mercy is that we receive it, and then we become merciful in that order. So we receive mercy, we become merciful. So my theory in Matthew chapter 5, verse 7 is this: the people through whom mercy will flow are people whom mercy has come. So again, not a self-righteous act or not a one-time, just an attitude that they can put on for a moment, but people through whom mercy will flow are people through whom mercy has come. So to put this in another way, people who know they need mercy and then get it will show it. Those who know what it feels like when mercy comes have experienced its healing power. Therefore, these people extend mercy. So let's look at Luke chapter 10, verse 30 through 37. Then Jesus answered and said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance, a certain priest came down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise, a Levite, when he arrived at the same place, came and looked and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. So he went to him, bandaged his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. On the next day when he departed, he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said to him, take care of him, and whatever you spend when I come back again, I will repay you. So which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? And he said, he who showed mercy on him. Then Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. So here we have a man beaten and left to die on the side of the road. A priest, a Levite, or church leaders, we could say in our day, had both seen this man in need, but acted like they didn't see him. They avoided showing him mercy. The Samaritan had mercy on this man and immediately came to his aid. The Samaritan picked him up, took him to a place to recover from his wounds. He even paid all the hospital bills. The question is, why did he stop, but the others did not? So again, going back to historical context, the Jews and the Samaritans, they were complete at odds. They were 2 groups of race that actually had nothing to do with the other. There was a lot of hatred. There was a lot of history there. And so a Samaritan and a Jew did not mix. They didn't get along. And so if of anybody, a fellow Jew should have been the one to come alongside and show mercy. But why the Samaritan? Why did he see this Jew? Why did he see this individual and have compassion and go the extra mile to show him mercy? So why didn't the other ones? Maybe, we don't understand. We don't get into the brain of the other ones. But the one who did show him compassion, maybe he thought someday there might be a Sunday school lesson on mercy. And if I stop and help, I don't think that's the answer. I don't think so. Was he acting on a set of rules that say be merciful? I mean, no, we don't see that from the Samaritans. They didn't have the Jewish law. And so it's highly unlikely. For all we know, the priest and the Levite were headed to the synagogue to give a lesson on being merciful, and in their self-righteousness, all they were focused on was that law, and they missed the whole point of showing people mercy. Here is why I think the Samaritan stopped and the others did not. The Samaritan knew what it was like to be in the gutter and left for dead. He regularly experienced something that the priest and the Levite didn't: rejection, ridicule. The Samaritans were referred to as half-breeds. The Jews simply didn't accept them, and they were considered less than human. So this man who had stopped to help could relate to what it felt like to be trashed and left for dead. It was firsthand experience. He knew what it felt like to be in need of mercy and to receive it. I must say that most of us struggle a little with the fact that grace, forgiveness, and mercy are free gifts from God. We feel like we don't deserve it, and as a matter of fact, we don't. None of us deserved it. But I think most people see their need for it. There are groups of people who find it more difficult to accept the free gifts for their lives. Self-righteous people being one of them. They don't get mercy. They don't understand it simply because they feel that they only get what they deserved. So let me say that again. They feel that they only get what they deserve. They say, yes, I got mercy, but basically I deserved it or I earned it. You see the self-righteousness in that. They think they deserve it because they did something to earn it. Some of them don't even feel they need it because of the fact of their perfection of the law or their self-righteous acts. These people talk about grace and mercy, but no sense of brokenness is in their heart. There's no gratitude. They never grasp the whole picture of their debt. They simply assumed their debt was small enough they could handle most of it and then get a little bit of a help from God. I don't know about you, but I was that guy. I refer to myself in my early years as an adult Christian as a Pharisee for those reasons, because I really thought I deserved God's grace. I really thought that I had done enough Bible study and I had gone to enough church services. I honestly, in the back of my mind, that's what I thought. I had never really received the fullness of God's grace. And so therefore I was unable to give it. Let me tell you a little short story. I remember one time I was ushering in a church service and there was a lady who came in and she was just, everybody knew her story and her sinfulness and all the things that she had done. It was a very public conversation. We knew what this lady's past would like. And she came to the altar that day and she gave her heart to Christ. And I remember sitting over there. I was so frustrated and I was so angry because the joy on this woman's face was so evident. She had literally found the life of Christ. And here I am, this self-righteous, doing a lot of good for God person. I didn't have that joy. It was so discouraging to me. I was actually mad about it. You see where self-righteousness will get you. But years later, whenever I came to that knowledge of grace through faith and that I didn't deserve it and that God gave it to me anyways, it changed my perspective. Now I understand the kingdom of God is wide open to anybody and everybody, and I rejoice because I see what mercy does and what grace does because I've walked this path of the Beatitudes beginning with brokenness. So the second group of people who find it hard to receive mercy are people full of shame. Maybe you relate to this. What they have in common with self-righteous people is that they need to deserve the mercy. The difference is self-righteous people feel like they deserve it, while shame-based people feel like, I don't deserve it. Do you see that? Self-righteous people feel like they do deserve it and they earn it, and shame-based people feel like they don't deserve it and they didn't earn it, so they have a hard time with it. So by definition, we cannot earn grace and mercy. It's a free gift from God. In a sense, both the self-righteous and the ashamed are equally right. We don't deserve it. But God longs to gift us lavishly with His mercy and His grace. Shame-based people hear grace and mercy and the fact that they have an unpayable debt, and it paralyzes them. When you tell them God paid their debt, they just can't let it in because they feel so full of shame. They're incapable of letting it in for two beliefs they hold dear to their heart. Number one, I have to deserve this. Number two, I certainly don't deserve this. The person struggling with shame will have the same struggle as a self-righteous person in accepting free gifts. Both believe they have to deserve it. They never feel clean or complete. Grace outside has not become grace inside. If we have to wait to receive grace and mercy until we deserve it, it is not real grace and mercy. If some of us really allowed ourselves to feel clean and complete as we really are in Christ, we would find some way to feel guilty for feeling that. Why? Because we don't deserve it. But that is the whole point. We could never deserve God's grace and mercy. It is a free gift, and that's why it's so amazing what Jesus did for us. We can't give what we don't have. If we have come to a place that we know we need mercy and receive it, then we will have it to give. When we realize that we need to be accepted by God and find out that by His grace we have been, we will be accepting of others. But unless we've come to that place, we won't have it to give. So it's through this abiding relationship with Jesus that we've talked about throughout this conversation that we receive the mercy we need. We become living examples to others of the merciful God whom we serve. And so I feel at the end of this session just almost a sobriety and almost a sacred moment here, where if you've processed through these other Beatitudes and you're at this place where there's this almost holy recognition of, man, I don't deserve it and I feel like I should deserve it, my prayer is that God will open wide your eyes to see His mercy and His grace. And that as He transforms you, that you'll look around your world and you'll see people that you give mercy to freely because you know what it's like to need it and you know what it's like to receive it. I'm so excited and I'm so encouraged that you've stayed with us this long and that you're processing through this. And as we look ahead to the next session, I'm just excited to see all that God is going to do in your life. So we will see you in session 7.